Deeper and deeper I go. I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine.
Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, we are pleased to present our National Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey as he presents the Christian Black Codes of 1724 U.S. jurisdiction. But before he gets started, be sure to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with others. Now, let's receive Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey.
Islam. We're going to talk a little bit about the Niceno-Constantinopolitan creeds operations under the Spanish Inquisition, adopted from the Franciscan Brotherhood, part of the social engineering for conquest of Asia and Africa, and particularly the Maghreb, Egypt of the West, that you know as Maghreb or the North Gate, North America, and the Aboriginal peoples here in their operations. And in their social engineering operations, they set up or adopted a set of code social engineering, particularly constructed from the dark side priesthood of the Bishopric of Rome, and they're known as the Christian Black Codes of 1724, adopted into all of the operative trading states of business operating at North America, which later becomes what you've been told are the states of the Union, which for the most part have been operating in from a de facto platform, particularly since 1860, 61, 62, and constructively well organized since 1871. When those of you who know about some of the operative political body politic operations operating at North America, you will be familiar with what is known as the Organic Act of Congress of 1871, and most scholars and peoples who teach civics are well aware of that official operations of de facto political platforms. Now, operatively, in order to write themselves into the history of the Asiatics here at the North Gate, many among the hybrid Europeans, coming from most of what they would call the dross class, coming from the Iberian Peninsula that you know as Europe today, etc. And thereafter, particularly after the 1800s, but much of the battles that have taken place on the land since the 1700s, etc., has been in the what you would call stage by stage, eventual overthrow of the Moorish Empire at the Maghreb or the Western Hemisphere. Generally referred to in history books as the colonization of North America. That's the cover for the colonization and the conquest of the Maghreb, or what is known as the Red House, also referred to as Casablanca, also referred to as Humpty Dumpty. But we're going to go into some of their operative psychology, and it integrated within their operations. It must be comprehended and must be overstood and understood by the people that the hybrid of Europeans who have been operating for the last couple hundred years at North America in a de facto pseudo sovereign authoritative position, much of their authority or jurisdictional powers comes from conquest, therefore de facto, unconstitutional, therefore de facto, in breach of treaties, therefore de facto. However, to the degree that they have been making decisions politically, socially, and economically that has not only affected we Moors of the North Gate, but also other nations and tribes on the planet due to their hegemony operations, also using in the nature of their operations dark magic, human trafficking, pedophilia, flesh eating, etc. Negative vibrations used through all scientific methods and tools, etc. However, it's important for people who are less than aware of what's actually at the root of the politics operating at North America to be aware of one of their main tools that have been used by the hybrid Europeans who have conquered the Moors of the North Gate, but also it's being presented for the people to be aware that the energies and the psychosis that have come from these operations is also dying. So when you see, or as you see the people around the planet awakening or reawakening to a cognizance that's related to the ancient Hykupto, ancient Egypt, ancient Africa, Asia, and those principles, it has more to do with people becoming aware of the negative dark tools that have been used to suppress them. And to that degree, and on that note, we're sharing some of the Christian Black Codes of 1724, and many of you who are already aware of it or of those codes are aware of some of the entries and the psychoses that are placed within it, and also the psychic attacks, the points are made for mind control, for breaking up families, etc. And we're going to hit on all of them. In the Christian Black Codes of 1724, there's 54 articles, basically. But we're going to go through a few of them so you can look at some of the social engineering that you see going on every day and understand and comprehend much of their motivations, much of the de facto legislation that takes place in and among those who are part of the demo operations of the Kaiklos and Ku Klux Klan operations, which you know today as the Cotton Wigs and the Conscience Wigs, who are veiled in what is known as the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, operating on the land in a de facto structure at North America. In the fact of the matter, from a true political perspective, that is their own private human trafficking political platforms, which have no what you call honor relationship to us, the people of the land. However, because it affects us, and because the fundamentals of the Constitution for the United States is derived from our fatwa, or the fatwa principles of the Honor Honesty Confederation of Moors to the north, etc., which you will be told in history is Iqua. It concerns us also because within the confines or the construct of the Constitution for the United States is their obligations to all treaties, etc., which comprises the actual supreme law of the land, all of which has been breached and is consistently being breached. However, we are going through the Constantinian code systems just to make you aware of some of their psychology. So we're going to read some of them and make some comments in between to how we might say reawaking some of those who are still sleeping so that we can be better prepared to start looking in the areas among our people with proper civics and self-determination, which would be right of sovereign self-government, etc., which is necessary for our people to re-qualify themselves for self-government. And so you must know some of the acts of your enemies in order to not be distracted by false paradigms and what they may call false flags that are put in place to distract you, whether they're social, political, or economic. So awareness of motivations of the chess game of life that's being played at North America, it is good to have a comprehension of some of the tools that are being used by the de facto politicians. Was there something you want to ask me, Doctor?
Yeah, there's a question, and I don't want to miss it, just I'll get there earlier, from Divine Sovereign. How do we hold them accountable for breaching the treaty?
By holding yourself accountable to it. I know that sounds to some people like a diverted answer, but in fact, that's what it is. And it's back to understanding that they are de facto. That's number one. And that they're, as it would say in the Septuagint or the Bible, there's no truth in them. Those who have taken over the honorable treaties and Constitution for the United States are actually operating in adverse position to the Republic principle that is at the root of that Constitution and treaty. So that must be understood. Now we must also look at the fact that our people, the Aboriginals at North America, for the most part, who have been socially engineered under the Christian Black codes, have not been harmonic with the law of the land themselves, as opposed to an assumption that just the hybrids have been in breach of constitutional principles. Keep in mind, the Constitution principles are more ancient than that document. That must be understood. And those principles come from Muslim law that actually come from Sabah law, or the Sabian Moors, etc., what you would call the ancient Coptic or Kupta Coptic Christians, etc. So you need to understand many truths that are about the culture of the people here that has not been taught generally, so that you don't get caught in the schisms that are also put in place to divide us among each other. So a lot of people will look at the fact of many of the Moors at the Maghreb being Muslim, and not be aware of the fact that Muslims or Islam is actually a sect of the Coptic Sabian or Sabian Moors, what you might call with a cover up. This is a cover up. The word Jew, which is a fiction cover up to cover up Saba, which is really covering up the Sabian Moors, which is the foundation of religion on the planet, period. That's the truth. And so because people haven't been taught the truth about the history of religion, people think that when you use the different sectoral terms like Muslim, Christian, and Jew, that you're talking about totally, from a narrative point of view, totally different philosophies when actually they all have the same root. But by people not knowing the real history, they're caught into the schism and take the position that they must take one side or the other in order to prove themselves worthy, when that is a false narrative that also must be corrected. And the other thing that must be corrected, when we're reading the Christian Black Codes of 1724, you must also be aware of the fact that many of the hybrid Europeans who have conquered the Western Hemisphere and have been on a tear to conquer the rest of the Asiatic world, particularly for the last couple hundred years, that they, for the most part, are not Christians at all. They use it as a front. Most of them are, in fact, Niceno-Constantinian operatives who have been using Christianity as a front for their operations. So that must be comprehended by the people, because a lot of people don't know that. And so when you're loosely using these terms, Christian, Muslim, and Jew, without knowing the background or the origins, we have a tendency to fall into the divisions and schisms that are part of the mind control and the psychic attacks that are used to control the people. Now, the closer and the more aware that our people become to the realities of what got us to where we are today, the closer and the more capable you, I, and we as a people will be in our capacity to enforce the law, the supreme law of the land, and of course, enforce the treaties. And of course, by virtue of that, causing the hybrid occupiers to take a different position. And that's what's going to force them actually to maintain honor or go back to honor for their own political survival. But much of that will be done, and is being done actually right now, from more of an ethereal plane now, as most of those or efforts that have been put forth to bring justice at the North Gate have failed in the third dimensional level, and therefore higher dimensional or planes of life energies are brought to bear, which are operative now. And this is, again, as we're talking about the Christian Black Codes of 1724, it is to let you know that that paradigm is dying. The force and powers that they have had availed to them under the Piscean energy to exercise that successfully, the energy platform that even would allow it to live is dying. And so this is also why we're presenting some of this, is so that you would be willing and more willing yourselves. And this is us. When I'm talking to you, I'm talking to me too, to let it go. Or what some people would say in a metaphorical position, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. You got to remember that the hybrid Europeans who have been operating de facto and breaching all divine law principles on the land and among the people, they have had their jurisdictional powers because we keep giving it to them, or we keep agreeing with them, or we keep trying to participate in dead structures, which you would know as corporate structures, with them, and to be a part of it. And in fact, by virtue of us doing that, we're actually projecting our energies to them, and it is certainly accepted by them, not unlike an innate or an inanimate animate machinery operating from the position of a receptor and a battery. When you stop feeding the beast cannot live. One of the problems that we have, again, is that the people seem to have this idea that the hybrid Europeans have power just because they have guns, or they have power just because they have used technology that they have stolen from ancient Egypt, ancient Egypta, ancient Yucatan, and hid it from the world, and have been back in engineering for a couple of hundred years, and by virtue of that, have put themselves artificially a few hundred years ahead of the rest of the world, and are in fact using that technology, which is really ancient technology, it's not new. So let's get that out of the way immediately. To enslave, and that's connotative, the world, or to make serfs out of the rest of the world. And with their black codes operations and plans to genocide the Aboriginal people before they wake up to the frauds and turn on them. And so from a political perspective, you can not justify, but comprehend a lot of their political motivations for promoting schisms. However, it must also be noted, as you must be aware, with the rest of the Asiatic world, as we've been telling the people for the last 10 to 12 years, that the rest of the civilized world were going to stop buying U.S. Treasury bonds. And as many of you have recalled, 10 to 15 years ago, and more recently, in the 7 or 8 year area of the timeline, by the calendar year, we've been telling people to start disconnecting themselves from the hybrid European corporations, because the nations of the world would stop buying their treasury bonds, which are rooted in the base of their economic operations, particularly since 1862, which is why you will see many of the records of the congressional records, for those of you who do research, will have a lot of blanks in them, because they don't want you to be aware of the fact that that part of those agreements that were made among themselves, particularly the Treaty of Peace and not the Treaty of Peace, the Secret Treaty of Verona operations, as well as the Kyclos operations at North America, in conjunction with the Circle Church and the Chancery operating at Fleet Street in District of London. We're talking the City of London, not London itself, but what we call a corporate platform for the bishopric or the dark priesthood, who have called themselves gods of the world. That roughly 1861, late 1861, 1862 is when they started imposing the tithe upon the Aboriginal people to pay off artificial debts that were artificially created, which are to this day referred to falsely as national debt. And so with all that they steal from the people in tithing, and they change the word tithing, tribute to Rome, as tax. And 20%, roughly around 20% of that goes to the British accredited registry operators of members of the Roman Curia, who construct most of the fixed writs that you'll find today with the IRS, as an example, with different organizations like the CIA, FBI, etc., and the funding the war machines that they go to and fro, the earth-devouring nations. The taxes is drawn from the people of the land, as well as some of your naturalized, not nationalized, some of your pseudo-naturalized hybrid Europeans who have come to the North America and who are corporate citizens of the United States, or what they say U.S. citizen, which is a corporate construct and not a nationality. For those, they're also taxed, although their tax burdens are limited, and 20% of that goes to the barristers, etc., which is again why They don't teach the people about the original Constitution for the United States and the treaties, which are conjoined as one unit, etc. So when you're talking constitutional law, constitutional enforcement, you're talking treaty enforcement at the same time. This is again why civics has not taught to conquered peoples, so that you're not aware of the obligations and the burdens of obligations and the obligations to all treaties that exist with those persons that our people have assumed, and that's a quote unquote assumed to be government when actually they're organized criminals. But again, by our people not being aware of the true history and the true politics and of treaty and constitutional law being conjoined, etc., and the obligations thereto also being on all parties, and by our people being falsely designated as Negroes, blacks, coloreds, etc., Boricane, and all that kind of stuff, Puerto Ricans and Latinos, instead of telling the truth that they are direct descendants of the ancient Canaanite Moabites and they are the real Aboriginal peoples of the land. And all the tribes here are actually Moors. Moors is just simply short for Al Moroccan, which means American, which means descendants of Moroccans. That's all it means. By us not being aware, and for the most part, for the last few generations, many of our people believing that the black codes was the identity of African peoples, adopted not necessarily willingly, but by customary fad dispensation, adopted the sociological term black, which is not a negative within itself. Understand that that's not a negative. But the term is put in place, or any nomen or designation of identity for a people that's put in place that has nothing to do with the truth of their pedigree, etc., actually takes them out of what is known as heritability, or in the capacity to inherit. So it's important that we fix that with our people, so that they can, by virtue of their own cognizance and consciousness, begin to take their places among the affairs of men and command the enforcement of constitutional principle, which is treaty principle. Keep that in mind. So when you look at the hybrids in violation of treaty, look at the fact that our people have been in violation of the treaty by claiming to be Negroes, blacks, and coloreds, of which they are not. And that's the truth. So again, as we're looking at the Christian Black codes, let's look at some of the motivation of the engineering. And I'll go through, say, 1 to 6. And for those of you who come here and share with us, some of you come on the official site, the official hours of office of with Dr. G official office hours, and also come here sharing with us at the official House of Reawakening Minds. You will be getting both information and inspiration, hopefully, that we take responsibility to evolve and develop our both spiritual and political venues, which are necessary to bring balance, particularly as we move out of this third dimensional, what you would call closeted or fenced in reality, going to the higher planes of life, and thus the higher levels of consciousness that come with it by default. And also that we're not blindsided or sideswiped with a lack of comprehension as these higher levels of consciousness pour on the planet at Midgard, which is being also cleaned up, as well as those who are countering the cleanup are trying to dirty up as much as they can. And so you have a dynamics that are taking place where our people are being dug out of the grave of ignorance, and there's others on the other side of the grave of ignorance that's constantly shoveling dirt back in, if you get the point. Good.
Here's a question from Carl QL. Our people, the American Moor, remain asleep because they believe some powerful being is coming from the sky. Will one really come from the sky?
Yes and no.
Because they've
This must
already
be
come.
comprehensive.
They have come from the sky before.
Already.
They've already done it.
It's sort of like, people will make the statement, will Jesus come again?
Every day.
And yes and no, if you get the whole point. But when you look at it from an anthropomorphic, that's like saying, will the sun shine tomorrow? Well, yes, it will. Somewhere. Will the energies that the sun brings come? Yes, it will. So the purification of the cycles of the sun in relationship to Midgard, or the firmament of Earth, goes through a cleansing period roughly every 36,000 years, roughly. And so when you look at what's going on, the Earth is actually purging right now. So you have a different energy coming from the sun. And you must be harmonic with that to comprehend what's going on and be, competent to handle it. And see, the more you're aware of how the heavens work, the more harmonic you will be with the heavens, and the less, what you might say, damage will be done by the cleansing. That's a default situation. And so, when we're looking at, as we're looking at the black codes, which have been in operation at North America, particularly since the 1700s, from an organized governmental perspective, and certainly has had its negative effect as far as destroying the families. This was one of the major goals of the Christian Black Codes, to make the people docile, to destroy our cognate relationship with nature and the workings of nature, to dissolve our families, to get us to reject the divinity principles upon which our civilizations have been structured. And in place of all of this, and not limited to this, is to adopt artificiality on multiple levels, whether you're dealing with artificial intelligence, whether you're dealing with neglecting, ignoring, rejecting the intuitive mind and the intuition and insight that is part of the seeing process, conjoined with the other five senses, which make seven senses in the circle of the head, or the cognates of the head. Dealing with the air and the fire, the heat, or the pineal gland, the eyes, the electrical circuitry, the ears, and the taste and the touch, etc., and the conjoining of all of those senses that actually bring you to a higher seeing, which they would call the third eye, or the cyclops, or the third eye, which you would also see as the eye of Horus, symbolic in Central America and also in Hikupta and the territories of Asia and Africa, that single eye. This is again why they always give that a negative, so that you don't look at that or have a comprehension of what the message actually is, and is referring to the all-seeing. This is again, as the hybrid Europeans took over Asia and Africa, is why they named their Pope the Father, and they named him the Holy See, which means the Sun See. That's what that means. Sun comes from Holy, comes from Hali Sanskrita, which means the sun, or the whole, or the great sun, etc., in that nature. So holy, when you hear terms like Holy Quran, Holy Bible, Holy Scriptures, you're talking about scriptures of the sun. If you're saying Bible, it comes from Biblos, which is just an area where we printed books. It's really not a name in the sense that people think it is, not named a book. It's really a tech book dealing with sun or equinoxes, but put in an anthropomorphic story form and metaphors. And so when you hear Holy Bible, it means sun book. When you hear a Holy Quran, it means sun reader, etc. But they're all related. The problems that we have is by the priesthood for selfish cause and selfish reasons have not told the people in general the truth about some of these things, because it destroys their little, what you would say, money generating platforms by which they've been stealing the widow's pennies for centuries in the name of whichever flavor gods they've been selling to the people without explanation. That's not a condemnation of the people who seriously and honorably have been seeking the Most High, or what we call the Source, or Allah, etc., 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 or the Divine Mother, the Cosmic Mother. All these different names are used to reference the Divine Source, etc. So the priesthood have pretty much made up secularisms by which they've been living off the poor for generations, but not telling the people the truth about the walk of man, about the nations, the tribes, etc., and the fact that that they have invaded many places and have written themselves into a history of which, in fact, they actually originally have no part, as well as corrupting much of the existing history and getting many of the people to separate themselves mentally from history, rights and wrongs that are actually their own. For the purpose of conquest, this was done. And so we're talking about some of these things to, number one, to encourage our people to take more responsibility for their lives. Number two, to stop looking up in the heavens for the coming of Jesus, because Jesus symbolically means justice. Metaphorically, it means justice. Etymologically, Jesus, as far as ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Canaan, ancient Moabites, etc. And as you already know, for those who do any research on the one or the character that they refer to as Jesus, you already know that Jesus was Moor. Moor comes from ancient Moabite, etc. And of course, Al-Moroccan comes from that. And so what you have is as you see in the Bible, the one who spoke with a voice of many waters, and his hair was like lamb's wool. So he had woolly hair, that's his antenna, and skin like burnished brass. And so that is the traditional copper color or complexion of the skin that is referred to as the true Al-Moroccan or the true American. However, the spirit or the energy of justice that comes with that character of Jesus, which is part of the principles of balance in divine law and nature, is represented by the anthropomorphic Jesus. And in fact, Jesus and his grandmother, who you know as Ruth in the Bible, was a Moabite. And so the Moors are direct descendants of the ancient Moabites. And those are the woolly-headed ones, or the ones with the hair like lamb's wool, who are the direct descendants of the ancient Sabians, which you refer to as Saba. And so when you're talking about from the misrepresented perspective of religion, the keeping the Sabbath, you're talking about keeping the principles of the ancient Sabian Moors. So you need to know the origin. And so a lot of our concepts that we have taken as some kind of a worshipful position is not indeed at all that in fact, but is simply a designation of the customs, traditions, and the culture of the ancient ones more than any worshipful thing, although that's usually how it's presented to people in your more modern history books. And so that had more to do with projecting the idea of having the people take a docile position, and this psychosis of looking for the idol gods from outside of themselves to come rescue them from the problems created by the priesthood, who are actually for the most part, a group of men who have been concentrating on their lower selves and have been summoning up demon energy for themselves for world conquest. And so we have the unfortunate situation where most people who have been presenting the what you would say religious codes to the people have not really been teaching the people religion at all. They've been teaching the people dogma systems and tagged it as religion, and in fact have been more practicers of what you call demonology than anything divine or helpful to humanity. And this has much to do with the negative conditions that you see at Midgard that have that the people of Earth have been suffering, for quite some time. And of course, you have people around the planet now as we're going into the higher planes of life, and some will call them dimensions. So as we go into the higher planes of life, and some will refer to it as the coming of the age of Aquarius as an example. All these are metaphors that actually are present to you some of the energy formats and the changes that come with the energy formats, as you would see the planetary movements or the Earth positioning itself in this quadrant of the galaxy, of this particular galaxy, under a total new energy. And so logically, and this is just simply logic, you'll see the sun take a different color, more of a white bright than its traditional, more orangish, yellowish tone or reflections of colors as it goes through the atmosphere of this firmament. And so you must understand that there's, you had, as the Earth went through the Futon belt, you had more resistance, and then you have less resistance as it comes out. So you will have also a waning of the energies expressed on the Earth from the sun. So you will have, your minimals and your maxims relative to the outputs of the sun. And you're getting ready to go into what you might call a restful period. And then you're going to have a projection of energy. And it's necessary for our people to be in a higher state of mind to handle mentally the energies that they're being already hit with right now and prepared for, which is another motivation, again, while we're going over the Black Code, so that the people can recognize that this paradigm, that the support paradigms that go or that have been conjoined with the Christian Black Codes that have been operating in society are collapsing. They're falling apart. So you can look at them and look at the bridge of this whole paradigm burning, but not cling to it. Observe it, learn from it, learn not to allow it to occur again on any human, Asiatic, African, or even the hybrid Europeans, and comprehend that whereas we may take choices in relative to the energies that we have within ourselves to help make things better at Midgard, and whereas we have neglected our responsibilities, because we also have treaty with the universe. You got to understand and comprehend this. You have obligations. And where we failed, it's no problem, but it's no problem at the same time, because the sun's going to clean this mess up anyway. So the more harmonic we are with reality, the more capable we'll be able to not be distracted by the paradigms or the constructs of the Piscean priesthood that are still operatively in power, but they're being dismantled on multiple levels. And so again, Christian Black Codes, which are really the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed operations hiding behind the name Christianity, that have been operating at North America. So being cognizant of that changes, gives one the opportunity not to waste your energy on fake arguments like we've been telling people for years. Don't get caught up in the fake race argument that has been promoted, particularly since the adoption by the priesthood of the Carlos Linnaeus and Blumenbach psychosis of the phenotype constructs to divide humanity and also to hide some of the reality of the hybrid origins of the what we would call albions. And that doesn't mean all of them. It just means from among them, you have many of the dark priesthood who have been using dark magic to conquer the world, and it's actually been holding humanity back. Many of their energies and many of their platforms are being removed in order to liberate humanity. And this thanks goes out to many of the humans on at Midgard and with some outside help. Because remember, the rule in this particular solar system, and my note is that fundamental rule is operative universally. Is that for the most part we have no interference without our free will to it or without asking. We've been allowed to evolve for the most part on our own. However, we have had some what you would call negative interjections that have taken place that have caused problems for everyone. So the closer we get to the principle of love, and the more we're willing to forgive ourselves honestly, and usually, and then really start using our divine mind and trusting our intuitive mind, much of the cure will come from yourselves, really. You know, we're looking for this outside remedy, and it's not exactly like you're getting some help, but it ain't exactly like that. It's only influence to get you to simply grow and come out of your shells. That's us. So let's go into the Christian Black Codes of 1724 that have been adopted into the corporate states thereafter, and particularly around the middle 1800s and enforced. And this has much to do with the present time political parties that have been operating at Midgard across the planet. So most people, when they're thinking about the Republican Party and the Democratic Party operating at North America, they're thinking, for the most part, that those jurisdictional operations are limited to North America. Well, let me tell you, they're not, and they weren't. They just come under different names from around the world, and they have entrenched themselves on the planet, and they have been causing quite a few problems that are being addressed. Don't think that they're not. However, the more cognate you are of what's going on, the more capable you are of making discernment and separating the wheat from the chaff. Christian Black Codes, 1724. Now, the Union Colony States, which you know as the United States, which is their private corporation of the Pope of Rome, that has been promoted falsely as the country for a couple hundred years, actually. It's bankrupt. So let's put that on the table already, so you comprehend what's going on, and even many of the activities that are coming from the persons who are claiming to be on the board of directors, like the Congress and the Senate for that corporation, which are really board of directors for that dead corporate entity, which is really an extension of the Spanish Inquisition, of unum sanctum and doctrine of discovery exercises. So the Union Colony of States award their agent organizations, that's the corporate entities, with a release of tithe tax exemption status that you know of as the IRS's 501c3. And the question to you all, one is this: how and where does the foreign people, hybrid Europeans, and their private corporate government derive power and authority to tax Aboriginal and indigenous natural peoples of the land, Moors? And where did the colonial state persons derive their authority to determine tax or to deny taxation or on or over the Aboriginal indigenous Moors of North America? And the taxing of the Aboriginal indigenous peoples, the Moors, is certainly not written in their constitution adopted from Annecy Confederation, nor from the treaties between Morocco, Great Britain, and the U.S. Corporation Operations of Trade. Now, who should pay taxes to Caesar? But those who belong to Caesar. And why should any organization receive tax-exempt status for their assistance in your enslavement? And our people, the Moors, who are labeled black, Negro, colored, etc., will never see the light of freedom, never see the light of liberty, or never see the light of justice if they're not made aware of or do not know the system that's being used against them, known as the CBCs. The CBCs is the Christian Black Codes. Now, the use of this knowledge for the good, so use it for the good, and not for bitterness, not for anger, but for knowledge and for comprehending the political structures, the political institutions, and the agencies so that you can help intelligently dismantle them. So use this knowledge for the good, study intensively, and teach the true history and Moorish nationality to your children at all costs. And the institutions upon which the masses are depending will collapse of their own corruption and rot. And we must prepare our people for the radical social and economic changes in the world politics which will and must come. And there is no way out. And you must take an active part in your own nation's Moorish affairs and quest for liberty to freedom's door. Exposing the well-kept secret ordinance system of the Union States of America and the U.S. corporation jurisdictions, known among all Masons, all Eastern Stars, all government heads, all shakuns, all sheiks, all rabbis, all bishops of the Bishopric of Rome as the Christian Black Codes for Social Engineering at North America, 1724. Appendix, March, 1724. Black Codes, Article 1. Decrees the expulsion of the Jews from the colony. 2. Makes it imperative on masters to impart religious instruction to their slaves. 3. Permits the exercise of the Roman Catholic Creed only. Every other mode of worship is prohibited. Article 4. Negroes placed under the direction or supervision of any other person than a Catholic are liable to confiscation. 5. Sundays and holidays are to be strictly observed. All Negroes found at work on these days are to be confiscated. Article 6. We forbid our white subjects of both sexes to marry with the blacks under penalty of being fined and subjected to some other arbitrary punishment. We forbid all curates, priests, or missionaries of our secular and regular clergy, and even our chaplains in our Navy, to sanction such marriages. We also forbid all our white subjects and even the manumitted or freeborn blacks to live in a state of concubinage with slaves. And should there be any issue from this kind of intercourse, it is our will that the person so offending and the master of the slave shall pay each a fine of 300 lire. And should said issue be the result of concubinage of the master his slave, the said master shall not only pay the fine, but be deprived of the slave and of the children, who shall be adjudged to the hospital of the locality. And said slave shall be forever incapable of being set free. But shall this illicit intercourse have existed between a free black and his slave, when said slave, according to the forms prescribed by the church, said slave shall be thereby set free, and the children shall become free and legitimate. And in such a case, there shall be no application of the penalties mentioned in the present article. Number 7, the ceremonies and forms prescribed by the Ordinance of Blois and by the Edict of 1691, for marriage shall be observed both with regard to free persons and slaves. But the consent of the father and mother of the slave is not necessary. That of the master shall be the only one required. 8, we forbid all curates to process or to effect marriages between slaves without the proof of the consent of their master. And we also forbid all masters to force their slaves into marriages against their wills. 9, children issued from the marriage of slaves shall follow the conditions of their parents, and shall belong to the master of the wife and not of the husband, if the husband and the wife have different masters. Article 10. If the husband be a slave and the wife be a free woman, it is our will that their children, of whatever sex they be, shall share the condition of their mother, and be as free as she, notwithstanding the servitude of their father. And if the father be free and the mother a slave, then the children shall all be slaves. Article 11. Masters shall have their Christian slaves buried in consecrated ground. Article 12. We forbid slaves to carry offensive weapons or heavy sticks under penalty of being whipped and of having said weapons confiscated for the benefit of the person seizing the same. An exception is made in favor of those slaves who are hunting or are shooting for their masters, and who carry with them a written permission to that effect, or are being designated by some known mark or badge. That's up to 12. Now you can understand where the gun codes come from, that they're enforced in targeted communities. You understand why you must go by de facto operations to the corporate state and get a marriage license to marry. You understand why the members of the Roman Curia, of the Circle Church and Chancery, etc., the Bar Association, have power over the estates of these people, and why all divorces must be litigated by the corporate state, which is representative of all manumitted persons, which does not mean free, it means transfer of jurisdictional authority. So our people, under the guise of the so-called manumission of freeborn blacks, all these tags that thought they were freed in 1865, and the jurisdiction of their estates and their children and their offspring and their condition and all inheritabilities were transferred to the Congress for the United States Corporation Company. And you can comprehend de facto operations since 1861, where they overthrow the republic under the guise of helping the people, and they set a seat for the Roman goddess Columbia in 10 square miles off the area that you would call Mary's Land and Virgin Land. And this is where you get the symbolism of Virgin Mary. And then they take on the power of Horus, or the eye, etc. And this is where you see them traditionally imitating themselves as ancient Hikupta or Kupti, or they'll say ancient Egypt, and then they blacken their eye and claim to be the sovereign divine rulers, except they're using all dark magic. So everything that they're doing is both what you would call projection Their whole life is puppetry, projecting puppetry, perpetration of frauds, pretending to be someone they're not, and all people they deal with, they do it all in what you call the death cult, or what you call the dead. So everything they deal with is a corpse, and all instrumentalities, institutions that they create are corpses or the dead or corporations, etc. Which is also why even when they communicate with the living, they will do their names or the designation in all capital letters, meaning they are the dead. And of course, because they are vampires, they draw all of your essence by virtue of your energy output, like a battery, and they will call it labor, and then they will tax it and make claim on it. And this is what the tithe is to Rome, that you've been knowing as the tax coming from the Inquisition revenue services that you're told is the IRS, because you thought the Inquisition ended a long time ago. No, it didn't. The Inquisition was institutionalized and is known as the U.S. corporation jurisdiction. However, that platform and all the agencies supporting of it, which have been empowering and poisoning the earth, poisoning the water, poisoning the land, killing the people, genociding the people, disrespecting and subduing the matriarchs or womanhood, knocking the women out of all positions of spiritual power to make sure that she does not go to her intuitive mind or trust herself, and therefore help to destroy her own families, all come from the Christian Black codes, from the Franciscan Brotherhood of the 12, what you call families of Rome, hybriding and pretending to be Al-Moroccans, and from the north have been conquering the world. And this is an essence of the Christian Black codes. So you understand why they want the guns from the people. There you go, it's Christian Black codes. You see why they kick doors in and steal people's children, and they do pedophilia, etc. Because the popes of Rome have claimed the children as their own under their Christian Black codes. And of course, they take the people out of their pedigree, call them Negro, Black, and Colored, in order to remove their obligations to the treaties and constitutional principles, etc. The trick is to get our people and those among us who they assign as so-called leader guys to promote what is known as the Black Codes paradigm and tell the people that is honorable African spiritual culture. And our people have grasped it and lost their birthright. Christian Black Code 1724. Constantinian Order of Rome, Roman Curia, and all their corporate energy operatives, etc. However, it's being dismantled. So if you see, and as you see the institutions, particularly operating at North America and being reflected around the world, because they're seated all around the world, being dismantled, don't cry. Use your intelligent mind and come together. Start loving one another, help one another, understand those dismantlements are purposeful for the ultimate good and liberation of humanity. Any questions, Dr. Noir?
Yeah, I'm trying to go through it. There was someone who mentioned, that the Vietnam War was, let's see that. Vietnam War was started to get rid of the Buddhists. It didn't work. That when the Vietnamese saw the melanated soldiers, they thought that they were the gods that returned to help them.
Well, that's why a lot of them have helped. For those of you whose parents, uncles, and others who have had some experience with people from that era of time, may have delivered this message to you, coming from some of the brothers in Vietnam and Cambodia, etc. brother, what are you doing here? How about that?
Mhm.
Well, it's true. Because these people don't know, they think that because these different tribes of Naga around the world think that they're not their own family. You can take many of these Asiatics from around the world and put them in our communities and dress them just like we dress according to the fads, and you wouldn't know too much the difference. Not really. You'd be surprised how much we're like.
I saw something with them singing, and if you didn't see who was singing, it was gospel, but you would have thought it was a
Yes.
Pentecostal
Mm-hmm.
church here, and they were
Mhm.
Asian, what we would call Asians. Here's a question: how do we, from Pink Illuminance, All Rights Reserved, how do we actively enforce Aboriginal title and unity by territorial positions? Moors, indigenous people of Canaan land, have not been fully successful against the British Crown, according to my knowledge.
Oh, well, true. Well, you see what's happening across the planet now, and the dismantlement of a lot of the institutions under the Black Codes, because remember, Black Codes are a psychic attack constructed by hybrid Europeans. So as the people are becoming cognate and active in Canaan land and elsewhere, and you see the disruption of the institutions of both Westminster, Washington, D.C., and the popes of Rome, you see it taking place there. This is part of the dismantlement. Because keep in mind, don't look at the people as being unsuccessful. Look at the fact that Rome hasn't fallen totally yet. As Rome falls, the real deal, why are you doing what you're doing? Why is the cognates being promoted? So that you, me, we can be more competent to take care of our affairs. You know, and I know already, in the state of mind that our people are in those Black Codes, that they not only would not properly administer their political jurisdictions, they would corrupt them and give them back to the hybrids. Is it not reflected in the fact that you've seen many of the Asiatics of North America in different walks of life acquire fiat to the levels that they could do a lot to help our people, but you see that when they usually step in that direction, if they're not overthrown by the hybrid Europeans via the IRS or some other one of their three-letter social engineering operations, you will see them usually get socially destroyed, or they're not in the state of mind proper to even build something to help themselves and their own people. And so they usually buy a bunch of expensive jewelry, making some hybrid rich with diamonds that are stolen from other parts of Africa. And they usually, like if you give them a 35-inch wheel to put on their car that costs $80,000, that's what they'll spend it on. So is such a person in that state of mind prepared to run government? Answer the question yourself. However, as people are becoming cognate and more realistic from among them, and it'll probably become more from the youth who are less contaminated, the truth will come from the mouth of babes. They will come with a cognizance given to them, bliss upon them by their mothers, and who will bring those champions here who will be qualified to fix all this mess. They're being born. They're not made, they're being born. Because keep in mind, particularly as our women become more cognate, able to forgive, willing to forgive themselves, proper use of the womb, almost everything we need they'll bring here anyway. Because the capacity is already in your light, in your DNA. We just need some clean-minded women or stargates to do their work without all the BS that we've been subjected to, including the Christian black codes that have been governing our families and tearing us apart. And we've been mad at each other, not knowing that the puppeteer has been operating this game on us. And we've fallen for it. We've agreed to these fake jurisdictions.
Speaking of the Christian black codes, what you're talking about, why is it that most Christians, including me when I was
people that claim to be Christians, let's put it
including myself, I'm gonna put myself in there, who was, when I was, claiming Christianity and embracing that, why didn't we know that these codes existed? Do you think that knowledge of these codes would have had less and less or fewer of us calling ourselves Christians?
Kind of like, it's not that it's unknown, because they're predominant in all the states.
But they're not. This is not.
They're not promoted educationally.
Right.
They're enforced in the corporate venues, like in the municipalities. When you read the Christian black codes, you will see actually the origin of the municipal codes in the different cities, how they target our people. You'll understand it because it's right there.
These have never been.
They've never
removed.
been changed.
They've never been changed.
They've never been changed. Our people have been trained to call it racism and prejudice, but they've never been pointed. No, it's not racism. Why don't you read the Christian black codes that operate in all these corporate municipalities, that all these council people in secret study? Why? You ever wonder why all the council people and all the mayors and all the governors and all these senators and congressmen just happen to be Freemasons, just happen to be daughters of ISIS, just happen to be Eastern Stars, just happen to be daughters of the American Revolution, just happen to be Odd Fellows, just happen to be Knights of Columbus? Come on. It's like, it's not that it's not there, Dr. Nail, it's that our people see these things and they don't pay attention to them because they're not them. Reverend Jones didn't say it, and he's a Mason. 99% of them. And they condemn it across the rostrum so the people don't look at it. They look at it, but it's them imitating Egyptian or Hikuta culture. It's just that they're dark side. Not all and every one of them, but for the most part, because they're used for conquest. It's so like this. Instead of using water to cultivate a plant, they'd rather use the water to drown a baby and then drink its blood. So people get mad at the water. This is how they use masonry. So when people look at masonry as an example, they don't look at masonry as astrology, which is the culture, because they don't know that masonry is astrology. You see the point? So they condemn masonry. Oh, it's the devil. No, those ones are using it as devils.
So they have their own form of masonry, which is dark.
Yes. Everything, a coin. If you have a coin, does it have a front? It has a front, physics. Have a front, doesn't have a back.
Yes.
That's fundamental physics, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's not quantum, but it's fundamental physics, third dimension, isn't it?
Yes.
So we're talking about aggregate operations of law on the firmament of Earth. So the firmament of Midgard deals with land, air, and water. So land, air, and water makes law, doesn't it?
Yes.
So the rules of law are based on the rules of nature. If one is not harmed with the rules of nature, one gets out of the knowledge of law, don't they? So those who've been governing you have misused that position and then don't teach you. And then when you go in those directions, they say, oh, it's the boogeyman, don't look at that. And isn't this how our people, for the most part, look at masonry? Don't most people condemn masonry and don't even know what it is?
Yeah.
People don't not know that masonry means mother and son? From a metaphorical image, you would look at the image of Isis, Ayana, which is also Isis, Sheba, which is also Isis, Ishtar, also Isis, and Horus on her lap. And then for those who have imitated Christianity, you'll see the image of Mary and Jesus on her lap, which is Isis and Horus. That's what all it is. That's mother and son study. That's Masonry. And the culture of us. Here is on Midgard. Who's on Midgard? Mother and son. Does the son of mother have a navel or a belly button? Yes. Does a man have a belly button? Yes. Then he's a mother's son. So he are born Masons. Do you understand that? Our people really, it's uncomfortable because so much has been contaminated. And I don't reject our people being what you call tentative about these things. It's just that they don't have the knowledge. But I do condemn the priesthood on all levels for not telling the truth because, like you were saying earlier, Dr. Naila, because if these things were known, the institutions would collapse because most of them are fake. Most of them are fraud. Most of them are projections of the truth watered down. Because if the priesthood told the truth, almost all institutions on the planet that's made in the third dimensional level of Pisces would collapse overnight. There would be an apostasy that the world has never known, which of course is taking place now anyway. So they can't stop it anyway. Thank you very much. However, this is the point. Like many times, Doc, as we've talked on different levels about, social engineering and the problems of humanity and how people will make statements about the Bible and then pretend they never heard about the Septuaginta. Mm-hmm. How people will talk about the Sabbath and then act like they don't know anything about the Sabian Moors from which the Sabbath comes from. But everybody in the name of religion talking about the Sabbath. It's sort of like a carpenter trying to argue with you that he doesn't know what a saw is or hammer. Now, if the man says that he's a carpenter and you're going to sit up there and argue with him and let him get this off on you that he don't know about a hammer and a saw, he's a liar and you're a dummy. You get the point? Because it goes together. So when you're talking about social engineering, they'll talk about ancient Egypt, ancient Yucatan, ancient America, and everything, and then act like they don't know recent history that took place in the last 200 years. But they're going to tell you about ancient history. Is that not a contradiction? So how can people know or make reference to the colonization of North America by hybrid Europeans and then act like they're not familiar with the Christian Black codes, which is commonly known around the world as operative social engineering at North America? Not just that, how our people are always making race arguments about race and then don't know anything about Carlos Linnaeus or Frederick Johann Blumenbach, from which that whole paradigm was adopted in the modern world. In the modern world, not in the ancient world. Had nothing to do with ancient world. We're talking about contemporary times. Put it this way. It's like someone claiming to be a scholar and then don't know what etymology is. It's like somebody talking about, like if somebody always talking about the Bible, and this is the word of God and stuff. And this is God's own sandwiches. And then this is the word. We're going around the world to teach the word. And etymology is the science of words. Like, duh. And then they pretend they don't know what etymology is and why our children can't read, because they have denied our children basic third grade etymon degrees, which they need in order to read. These frauds that we've been calling leaders, politicians, and priests, they can get that off on some of these people talking about they don't know. They knew, they chose. Point of it is they can fool the people like they've been fooling them most of the time. But in the age of Aquarius light, and with the electricity of Uranus hitting them on all fronts, and Saturn energy, cashing all their checks. We don't have to prove anything to them. Let them experience it, because they ain't getting it off no more. It's being dismantled. Yeah, they know. Stop making excuses for them. That's part of the reasons why this BS has survived, because they have no jurisdiction except what we keep giving them and making excuses for them. If you want to debate about some little 2-year-old that keep talking about the Bible, the Quran, and all the holy books and holy roly prayer, and the little baby, because they're limited in their new bodies, old spirits but new bodies, not being able to exactly communicate because veils pull over them, Although some of them connect, some of them, and then, they're trying to figure out how to talk to you. Well, some grown man or woman that's been taking people's finances and stealing the widow's pennies, talking about Jesus, God, Moses, Allah, Muhammad, and getting over on these poor people for decades and pretending they don't know the origins of all of those sects. You make excuses for them, I don't. They know damn well what they're doing and what they have done to this planet. We don't have to make any excuses anymore because they're being cleaned up. Let them fight Mother Nature, because she ain't playing. You can call her Allah, because Allah is a feminine name too, and a lot of people got that twisted too. Mom's cleaning up the house, get over it. And those who think they ain't going to get spanked, keep on trying her, because she ain't playing no more. Hopefully, and I don't have to hope because it's on the plate already. Women are becoming cognate, and those who recognize their Stargate capacities are bringing champions in, so we don't have to argue it no more. You know how people say, well, I'm not into that, and I don't believe those sandwiches that you talking about. I don't care. I ain't trying to prove nothing to them. Sit back and experience it, because you getting it. All of us are getting it. You will either clean up willingly or you will be cleaned out, whether you will to be or not. Thank you very much. So, and let's add to this. You know how like a lot of exercises we've been doing for the last 25, 30 years, talking about in personam jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, territorial jurisdiction, the different levels of jurisdiction, the cognates of writs, agreements of jurisdiction, quo warrantos, mandamuses, etc. Those were exercises to get you working again in your mind. But understand, even those platforms, as we move along, aren't even going to be used anymore. They're just for your mental exercise. Those platforms of government structure that you've been used to, done, Kaputski, it's not going to be it's going to be governed by councils, just like Modulus. Modulus is pretty much in the nature of what will be in the future on another level, more galactic level, but same principles. But what you've been, people getting together, and you know what we're going to do? We're going to make them honor the treaties and stuff. We're just doing this for a mental exercise to get you straight. All those platforms is done. Done. But you need the exercise. That's why we've been telling you for years. Some of the things we're doing today is for your exercise, because you need to be thinking. You need to comprehend what should have been. But since they didn't do it, all these things were breached. But they only played their role for that third dimensional operation. They're not necessary anymore. Take that. Oh, and they're being enforced too, on another level. So people, whether they will, I don't feel like it, I feel as though, play the games all you want to. I don't care what Todd you guys says. I ain't trying to prove anything I'm saying. All I'm saying is, for those of you who've been listening to me for years, what I told you 15 years ago, you're living today. And I ain't trying to prove anything. We'll sit back, drink some juice, eat a peanut butter sandwich, and watch the dynamics take place. Told you get an umbrella, didn't need it. Fine. The rain is here. Big deal. It's for washing now, that's all. Any other questions?
Comments. Okay. With the fall from Sega Sage, with the fall of this Constantinian order, what will happen to corporations such as China and Russia that are competing with the United States corporation?
Let's put it this way. Let's look at the dynamics of the politics. Is the United States itself legitimate for anyone to be arguing for or pro or con?
Yeah.
So, do you think that the Manchurians, and we're not talking about corporate China, which isn't Chinese, that must be understood too. You think they forgot the Opium Wars that murdered many of their people and destroyed much of the culture? Huh? Whose side you on? That's one way to look at it. Now, if you're talking about legitimate government operations of states united under treaty that were overthrown 1861, now if you're talking about the restoration of that political platform of honor for hybrid Europeans doing treaty with the Moors, I'm in support of that all day long, of the Republic. Distinguished from the Republican Party, distinguished from the Democratic Demon Party, which are both frauds, neither of which honor the treaties or the Constitution. Oh, what? They're competing with the Manchurians? I think it was some of their praetors who moved some of the industry over in China after they took over some areas of China, and they're in fact not Chinese at all, but they've been controlling part of China's economy. They're actually some hybrids. So who are you talking about? You know, and it's sort of like this. You know, we're dealing again the dynamics of people being confused that the United States is not a country. And they keep talking about the United States as if it's a country. Competing with who? It seems to me that when the hybrid Europeans were murdering a lot of the Seminole and Illy's Moors in the land of flowers, and the Wachita, the Dugdamunya tribes, etc., and the Anyanwea, it was some Russians that came to help and stopped a lot of that stuff. So why we made it Russians? That's just a question. And also, a couple of wars that took place and that were being perpetrated by people de facto who were operating from North America, operating in Iberia, Europe, Germany, etc. It was some Russians that stopped a lot of crap from happening here. Why don't they tell you about that? So my question to all of us is, before we start taking sides about anyone, we need to start figuring out who's really who's been projecting. Mustn't we? Mustn't we? Mustn't we? Because the United States is not a country. It's a private corporation owned by the popes of Rome, who have been the source of problems on the planet. Let's remind ourselves of some things. Let's remind ourselves about the U.S. jurisdiction. Take note, you all. Now, most of you are scholars who come here at the official House of Reawakening Minds. So most of you already know this stuff. And like, you know, I could talk to Dr. G as we're talking today. You know, a lot of times, you know, it gets boring hearing ourselves talk because we've been telling this stuff for years and years and years. It just has become common knowledge now with many people in what they're calling the conscious community, which is also a misused statement. However, we've been telling people this for 25, 30 years. So the original organic and de jure constitutional United States Republic operating at North America and its established Republican form of government set forth at Article 4, Section 4 of that Constitution was secretly and covertly overthrown and converted into a foreign, privately owned, and for-profit corporation in the year 1871. For those of you who don't know, look and research the Act of Congress, 1871, and they will often list it in like diplomatic relations, etc., as the Organic Act of Congress, 1871. And that misprision, deprived, and foreign feudal law entity was styled as the United States Corporation Company. It's not the country, it's a private corporation, a conglomerate of Roman Curia member corporations controlled politically on the legal or what you would call jurisdictional side by the barristers of England from the British Accredited Registry known as the Bar Association, who create all their forms, fixed forms, known as IRS forms, etc., in homage to the fake, artificial, perpetrating, imitation Queen of England, answering to the Pope of Rome and the bishoprics of Rome. That corporation and all corporate entities are governed by them and the Roman Curia. That's why every time you use one of their forms, it's already colored and you always lose. They're organized criminals. Get over it. Now, so that misprision derived in foreign feudal law entity was styled as United States Corporation Company. Many of you will recall about maybe 10 years ago or more, I shared with you all copies of the United States Corporation Company's corporation papers of 1925 and information on their bankruptcy then again, which then you understand what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did with the birth certificates to rebond them, because no one was buying the marriage certificates anymore. And everybody's now talking about the birth certificates. Who's talking about those marriage certificates that funded this whole fraud operation? It's the divinity of the Jesus of the Lord up in the rice in your eye. That's why he threw rice in your eye. So you pay attention to that priest was a damn demon behind the pulpit. Let me tell you something about these demons. Game up. Anyway, so the privately owned and foreign entity was created by acts of misprision and sedition. And all its corporate franchisees, that means all the corporate municipalities and the corporate counties and all the corporate states of entity operations are member body politics of the Roman Curia, and none of them are legitimate, not a one. And this politically and socially subdued truth is actually the source of the functioning jurisdictional powers that gives the Pope of Rome and of the Vatican bishopric the valid and affirmable authority as expressed and executed via all issues of de facto color of law legislation that they've been operating and putting on the planet since 1871. So, the United States is the private corporation belonging to the Popes of Rome, operated and regulated through the bar members that you know as the Bar Association, which in the Bible would be called Pharisees and Sadducees. You call them now lawyers and attorneys. Did you not know that they was the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Duh. All the paperwork that they be sending you, the marriage certificates and the birth certificates and all of this stuff comes from them. This is why they always come into all of your estates after they signify, get men and women battling each other. Soon as they get married with that private contract, which they're treated as ships in the night, and the corporate state comes in and rapes them. And they've been doing it for quite some time. They got not a damn thing to do with anything divine. It's a spell cast for human trafficking. All marriage certificates sold by the corporate states are cast spells of the priesthood regulated by the Roman members of the Roman Curia, registered and regulated from Fleet Street, England. They ran out of them. Now they got the birth certificates. It ain't nothing new. It's just that some of the people starting to think and found out about, the birth certificates are really bank bonds. Notice the number over here and notice the Cusick number on the social certificate. Whoa, we didn't know this. And nobody talked about the marriage certificates, did they? The whole bunch and caboodle of all of the bull is going down the tubes. Wake up, y'all. They're all Christian Black codes operations of bottomry instrumentality for human trafficking. And that's not a maybe, that's a fact. Grow up, start taking responsibility, and find your God within. They ain't out there in the sky. Some out there that you've been calling gods, but they ain't not exactly what you've been thinking. When we were talking earlier, Dr. Naila, one of your poems, I was when we were talking earlier, and I said, "Oh, can you read that?" Because that was apropos to really even this. Because remember, we're talking about the Christian Black codes, because they've been operative for a couple hundred years to destroy the people and to destroy the families of Aboriginal people. And you just simply need to know the tool that has been used. When you see the operations of all the municipal operations, the taxation, what they will call the regency regulations, you see zoning, all of these have their root in the Christian Black codes. All of the political operations that you think is separate or something that they've done with some intelligence of metrology, no, it's Christian Black codes. And so now wake up, get real, put on your armor, stop being docile, and start rejecting Rome at every point, every angle, and stop giving the U.S. corporation jurisdiction. It's not a country. That is the pocketbook and the collection arm and the war arm for the Roman Curia operators through the Roman Catholic Church, the P2 Masons, and the Vatican. That's the truth. However, at the same time, some of these institutions, though still in power, are being dismantled. That's the disruption that you're experiencing, including them stealing personalities and souls and putting out the oxygen. So to slow down the operations of the third eye, which you know as the pineal gland. And so they put a mask on you. And you know what mask means? It means person. Personality means mask. Don't think that they're not operating metaphysically either, because they are. Christian Black codes, Constantine. But they thought nobody was going to come and get them, because they've been murdering everybody for decades. They thought they was going to get this off, didn't they? Well, Divine got another argument for him. The Cosmic Mother, she's kind of pissed a little bit, to speak it lightly. Any other questions?
I am trying to see that. Okay, I'm starting up from the bottom and moving back up. So here's one. Mm-hmm. Grand Sheik, how should our daughters, this is from Because I Said So, how should our daughters marry at this point? They each will marry in 2022. How should we instruct them? Thank you.
Number one, the main instruction is that you got to get away from Rome and understand that the U.S. corporation and all municipalities are members of the Roman Curia. If you want to serve Rome, send them to them. If you don't, pull them away from Rome and take responsibility. There we go. That's your answer. Do all of your honorable obligations within your family, outside of the jurisdiction of the corporate state. All corporate state operations are frauds created by Rome for human destruction.
So actually, they can have a commitment ceremony.
You got that absolutely right.
Commitment ceremony with the.
You got that. We'll talk about that in the future, as a matter of fact, of some details on what you can do and what is your avail to you to do. It's just that we haven't. See, this is what has been happening to us. We've been groomed to believe outside of ourselves. We've been groomed to look for the answers from the enemy who've been lynching our mothers and fathers. We've been looking for the ones who've been killing our babies to save our babies. Well, guess what? You gotta stop doing that.
Okay, here's another one. You hear those?
Fireworks.
Fireworks or something. What would be the meaning? Shalom, peace. Dr. G, why haven't Moors claimed mounds and grounds in North Morocco via Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People and created communities?
Consciousness, everything that's going on right now. What you see is what you call transfer of power. We're in a transitional stage. People who are alleged to be conscious and people who are becoming conscious are all still in transitional stage. Our conversations now are just to make things more malleable, to make this travel a little bit more peaceful for the people, to promote cognizance and more consciousness and self-responsibility among our people. Because everything, all your answers will actually come from within, truthfully. However, right now we're sharing with each other to help each other along. But anything I say, truthfully, you already knew.
Here's another question from JB. Question for beloved Taj Tarik Bey. The so-called United Nations in assembly, I guess, it's really United Corporations and
yes,
assembly.
It belongs to the Pope. All of those institutions that have been presented to our people in the name of helping humanity have actually been disguised platforms for genocide against humanity. That's the truth. One of the, for those of you who may have a Circle 7 Quran from the Moorish Holy Temple of Science and the Moorish Science Temple of America, note that within the different surahs or the different chapters in the Quran, you'll notice that chapter 1 is the only chapter that is not enumerated. All the other chapters are enumerated. Pay attention to that fact. Read chapter 1, break down each paragraph, and you'll see the past, the present, and the future. And the underlying messages that Drew Ali was presenting to the Moors of North America, who have been called Negro, Black, Colored, Indians, West Indians, etc. All of whom are ancient Canaanite Moabites. That's a fact. Get over it. Accept that you've done good and you've done bad. Grow up, take responsibility, and help start fixing things for humanity at large.
Here's a question from Milton McGowan. Wasn't 1871 the year of corporate entities consolidated power under the Lloyd's Act of London?
Of course. That's why they all have what you call those Dun and Bradstreet numbers. All of them have them. All the corporate entities. That's another reason why, like, even when you're doing any business by force or anything with any of these persons or agencies, agents who are claiming to have authority as government, why don't you ask them what their business Dun and Bradstreet numbers, and you'll find out they're all corporations registered in London and in England. And the idea that people have in an American country, America's a continent. Get over it. America's not a country. And the United States is a private corporation for human trafficking and conquest purposes, has no what you would call de jure operations. None. Nada. That's why the world's in shape that it's in. People have given them strength. People have given them jurisdiction. People have supported them. And what have they done? They've been murdering your children, eating them, breaking up your relationships, and stealing your estates. Name some good that they've really done. Don't hold your breath while doing it, though. And don't think these things have not been known. People who have known these things have been silenced, cut off, murdered, suppressed, imprisoned, and everything else negative. You want to read a few more of the Black Codes?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to read a few, share with you a few more of the Christian Black Codes. Christian Black Code 1724. And you'll recognize some of these policies that are enforced in different municipalities under different corporate states across our land. Article 13. We forbid slaves belonging to different masters to gather in crowds either by day or by night under the pretext of wedding or any other cause, either at the dwelling or on the grounds of one of their masters or elsewhere, and much less on the highways or in secluded places under the penalty of corporal punishment, which shall not be less than the whip. In case of frequent offenses of the kind, the offenders shall be branded with the mark of the fleur de lis, and should there be aggravating circumstances, capital punishment may be applied at the discretion of the judges. And we command all of our subjects, be they officials or not, to seize all such offenders or arrest or conduct them to prison, although there should be not judgment against them. Now you understand what the members of the gangs of New York have been doing to the people on the street, and you all been calling them law officers, and they're really Roman soldiers. Christian Black Code, y'all. It ain't hidden. It's just that we haven't been paying attention. We've been sitting around talking about,
and they're racist, and they got make racist sandwiches, and they shouldn't be passing out racist sandwiches in the black, green, and purple communities of the blackness of the purple people.
imbecilic statements where people really don't comprehend reality. Wake up, grow up, and start dealing with reality, because that's what's been doing stuff to you. The people who've been claiming de facto to be your government and the municipal officers of the private corporation enforcing their Christian Black codes, and then getting you to run around talk about racism. Total diversion. Total diversion. Stop playing victim. Take responsibility. Is there something else, Dr. Noir? I'll read another code while you're looking at something else. Article 14, Christian Black Code 1724. Masters who shall, because all you need to do is take the word master and put it into city, borough, city of Philadelphia, city of Wilmington, city of Newark, etc. They take the place under manumission rules, the corporate responsibility of persons and property, and they designate the people under person of the corpse of the dead for the benefit of the municipalities under the corporate states, under the corporate union corporation, United States, under the secret treaty of Verona, delivered to the circle church and the chancery members to be regulated, delivered to the fake queen, and delivered to the bishopric or the clergy of the popes of Rome. That's what's been running this thing. And everything they've been doing to you.
And the Chinese did. And then the Russians took your sandwiches.
No, it's Rome and the bishopric. So, Article 14, masters who shall be convicted of having permitted or tolerated such gatherings as foresaid, composed of other slaves than their own, shall be sentenced individually to indemnity and their neighbors for the damages occasioned by such gatherings, and to pay for the first time a fine of 30 lire and double that sum on the repetitions of the offense. Article 15, we forbid Negroes to sell any commodities. Now you understand why they have licenses to even do business or trade, stealing your labor and your property. We forbid Negroes to sell any commodities, provisions, or to produce or produce of any kind without the written permission of their masters and without wearing their known marks or badges. And any persons purchasing anything from Negroes in violation of this article shall be sentenced to pay a fine of 1,500 lire. Now you understand where licenses and permits for you to even trade among each other, even to braid your own hair, where it comes from, the black codes. So don't you be thinking that these persons and people operating in these municipalities are unaware of the origin of those regulations upon the people, imposed upon people, that they've been using to rob the people of their rights and their liberties and their property and of their labor. Christian black codes, Constantine order, Niceno-Constantinopolitan creed operations pretending to be Christians, conquering the Western Hemisphere, sometimes called European colonialism or hybrid European hegemony, falsely also called white supremacy. Get real. Is there anything else? If you want me, I'll read some more. All right, Article 16, 17, 18, and 19 provides a length for the clothing of slaves and for their subsistence. Article 20, slaves who shall not be properly fed, clad, or provided for by their masters may give information thereof to the Attorney General of the Superior Council or to all the officers of an inferior jurisdiction, and may put the written exposition of their wrongs into their hands, upon which information, and even ex officio, shall the information come from another quarter. The Attorney General shall prosecute said masters without charging any cost to the complainant. It is our will that this regulation be observed, and all accusations or crimes or barbarous and inhumane treatment brought by slaves against their masters. That's where you get the Department of so-called Child Welfare and Human Services. That's where that comes from. In case you didn't know, and those politicians pretend they don't know what they've really been using. See, what they do, they steal all your substance and then put you under a false jurisdiction to give you pittance of some of your own estate back, and then put you in debt for it, and then regulate your family under the guise of helping you. Article 21, slaves who are disabled from working either by old age, disease, or otherwise, be the diseases incurable or not, shall be fed and provided for by their masters, And in case they should have been abandoned by said master, said slave shall be adjudged to the nearest hospital, to which said master shall be obliged to pay 8 cents a day for the food and maintenance of each one of these slaves. And for the payment of this sum, said hospital shall have a lien on the plantation of the masters. Now you understand how they've been stealing your labor, and then after they've used up your body and your labor and your age, then they have what they call nursing homes for you to send those who have been made sickly by all of the crap they've been feeding you. State property. Don't think that these politicians who've been making all these regulations of these municipalities and these so-called council people aren't aware of the Christian Black codes, because they use them to legislate from. And they don't vary from it either. They just change the words, change the structure. But the whole platform is about human trafficking and human regulation and taxation of your labor under the guise of being your government. They're not your government, they're your enemy. But since you all haven't accepted that, they're showing you every angle that they're not your friend. So we don't have to convince you at all, because they're kicking your asses left and right. You got any cheeks left? Want me to read another one?
Yes.
Article 22. We declare that slaves have no right to any kind of property, but that all that they acquire, either by their own industry or by the ability of others, or by any other means or title, whatever shall be the full property of their masters, and the children of said slaves, their fathers, their mothers, their kindred, and other relation, either free or slave, shall have no pretensions or claim thereto, either through testamentary or positions or donations inter vivos, which dispositions and donations we declare null and void, and also whatever promise they may have entered into by persons incapable of disposing of anything and or participating to any contract. Now you understand why they tax you on everything, on your labor, on your wages, and sign you as a corporate person. And every time they even write from the municipality, they will have the nomen in all capital letters, because the estate of all things that you thought you possessed, they have claimed under unum sanctum and the doctrine of discovery. And you have no right of property or person or of labor or of any inheritance. There's your municipal codes. So you can pretend that you never read this stuff, and you can pretend that those politicians that you keep voting for didn't know this. All of their rules come from the Christian Black codes of the Constantine order.
I never heard of that before.
Yeah, but you live it every day. And you see them enforcing it on the street by beating people up, ritually murdering people on the street. And now you know why nothing happens that appears to be even remotely justice. So are you going to keep on supporting these people? You going to keep on trying to be a part of them? Keep it up. They're going to show you the demons, who they really are. Many of you are not convinced yet. You need a little bit more pain. Some need a lot more pain. Article 24, slaves shall be incapable of all public functions and of being constituted agents for any other person than their own masters, with powers to manage or to conduct any kind of trade, nor can they serve as arbiters or experts, nor shall they be called to give their testimony either in civil or criminal cases, except when it shall be a matter of necessity and only in default of white people. But in no case shall they be permitted to serve as witness either for or against their masters. Now you see why it's so difficult for you to sue corporate state agents when they do stuff to you, your family, steal your children, and do all kind of stuff. Christian black codes. And all these administrators are using them for guidance to their legislation. All of your municipal, city, and borough operations are based in the Christian black codes. So you've been sitting around talking about racism and prejudice, and it's the Christian black codes of the Constantine order, of the Bishopric of Rome. And you keep talking about voting for them.
I got a right to vote. I'm marching for my right to vote.
Duh. I know that a lot of the adults are so compromised and corrupted and hypocritical that they will reject this altogether. However, mothers are bringing youth in, and the youth will come into this consciousness with their eyes wide open and will help clean this mess up. For the most part, this is for you all. I'm not trying to argue with the old heads who've been selling themselves out and selling their babies and pretending to be Jesus freaks or Allah lovers. You know, they can do what they want to do. The Aquarian age is for the newborn and the unborn. And this is just a small message to help us along.
Here's a question while you're running from paper plane. What should we study in order to remove ourselves from Rome?
First, knowing that Rome is Rome and Rome is not your country. That's the first thing. It's back to, why have our people been supporting institutions and agencies with their labor, their taxes, their services, their so-called vote, their dedication, is because they thought these institutions presented for them or represented them. Once you know, and you know now, that they never did, they're all parasitic, that's enough for you to start rejecting them. That's your answer. And using your own intelligence and look within, because it's all within you. You just have not believed in yourselves. You've been believing in everybody outside, including the idol god worships they've been selling you at a severely high and non-productive cost. Take responsibility. That's how. And information-wise, you've been given this information for quite some time. Whether or not you've been paying attention, that's another issue. Is there anything else you want me to read another one?
Please continue.
Hmm?
Please continue.
Let's see, excuse me. Slaves may be prosecuted criminally without their masters being made parties to the trial. These are those what you call trials in absentia type things they've been doing to our people. Except they should be indicted as accomplices, and said slaves shall be tried at first by the judges of ordinary jurisdiction, and if there be any, and on appeal by the superior council, with the same rules, formalities, and proceedings observed for free persons, save the exceptions mentioned hereafter. And keep in mind, this is where our people keep recognizing when they keep on seeing this so-called double standard of law that they keep arguing about. Well, there it is. There it is. It's not an attitude. It's written. You know, and this is back to, you know, like last year and a few years ago, every once in a while we'll do a reminder class or rehash jurisdictions and understanding jurisdictions and the important for our people to understand jurisdictions, what creates them, what their categories are, the challenging of jurisdiction, which would be called quo warrantos or averment of jurisdiction, why they exist. Mandamuses, also being in proper person so that you can even have the capacity to even make an argument. Under the Black Codes, you don't even have the capacity to even make an argument because it's a dead status, which Barack Obama told us, our people, it was. So why people even complain about him, at least he told them that, didn't he? He told people that blacks are dead status. They can't say that he didn't say that because he did.
Someone asked, I can't pronounce the name, appellation, do Moors have a relocation plan?
Why?
It's well, where we got to go.
It's your house. Why? How about do the hybrids have a relocation plan? Do you think they're going to steal the land and steal the people and they're going to retain it? They may think so. I don't think so.
Taj, who comments? Taj talk about how a passport means, I guess, you're a U.S. citizen. Some more teach that they put the free national name on the passport. But it is all in capital letters. Can you explain that?
Yes, anything that's created by the corporate state is a corpse, is dead, and is de facto. That's the fact. Now, when are our people going to stop supporting all these institutions that put you on your knees to get your head chopped off? And when are you going to put your energy together to reestablish your own consular venues that are the law communications all over the world? It's not that they ain't in place. Have you been exercising it? Have you been helping those who've been trying to get you to do that, exercise your obligations to your affairs with the rest of the families of nations, which is a consular venue of diversity, of nationality, all over the planet, which is a constitutional and treaty issue, not some U.S. passport, which is an imposition under maritime law, claiming the vessels of the living man and women, of the sentient man and women, to be a ship under maritime law. That's what a passport is for, ships, not for humans. So let's work on working that out, shouldn't we? Shouldn't we be? So when we're talking about rights and lands, then land jurisdiction distinguished from maritime jurisdiction. Isn't a passport a maritime jurisdiction?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, don't we have work to do, you all? And keep in mind, the U.S. is not a country. It's a private corporation constructed specifically for human trafficking. Specifically for human trafficking. Even their courts are what? Traffic courts. Human trafficking.
I told you what they did try to do to me when they said I was speeding and I went and protested and
convert a right into a maritime trafficking.
They offered me a PBJ, which means a plea before judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So you just pay,
Mm-hmm.
and I've refused.
Mm-hmm.
And you could beat it all together too.
What?
The jurisdiction of the fraud. This is for people, as a matter of fact, Dr. Mayo, for all the scholars out there, because you already know that the Curia members will always send trolls out, right? Show in the Constitution for the United States or any treaty where traffic court was established under the jurisdictional powers of and for the United States. Show it. Show it. You can't and you won't, because it doesn't exist. It's a fraud. And everything concerning it is a fraud. But they've gotten away with it because you've accepted their fake jurisdictions and you never challenged it. Anything else, Dr. Mayo? We're going to read a few more of these black codes.
Yeah, I think they're wanting to hear the different codes, because
let's read 36. The slave who was sentenced to suffer death on the denunciation of their master shall, when the master is not an accomplice to the crime, be appraised before his execution by 2 of the principal inhabitants of the locality, who shall be especially appointed by the judge, and the amount of said appraisement shall be paid to the master to raise the sum, and shall be collected by the persons invested with that authority. So you can see when agent representatives of the gangs of New York are sent out on behalf of the corporate state. The corporate state would be politically referred to as the master. So when you see in the Christian Black Codes master, just change it to the corporate state, whether you're dealing with the mayor or the governor, etc., or any agents or agencies sent out to feed upon the people by them. Those would be called contractors. And they're delegated what you would call, or given what you would call, pledged authority to the corporate exercise. This is why, when for our people who don't really comprehend some of these principles, why when you do any research in Supreme Court cases concerning so-called, and this is a designed statement, so-called police brutality, and you will see all Supreme Court cases will demonstrate or rule that the obligations of the police is not to the people, but to the corporation. That's a fact. Just a reminder so you comprehend what's going on out in these streets on your land with these demons who you've been thinking was your government, who are not your government, never were. Article 37, we forbid all the officers of the Superior Council and all our other officers of the justice in the colony to take any fees, or receive any perquisites in criminal suits against slaves under the penalty, and in so doing of being dealt with as guilty of extortion. Article 38. We also forbid all our subjects in this colony, whatever their condition or rank may be, to apply on their own private authority the rack of their slaves under the pretense whatever, under any pretense whatever, and to mutilate said slaves in any one of their limbs or in any part of their bodies under the penalty of confiscation of said slave. A master so offending shall be liable to a criminal prosecution. We only permit masters, when they shall think that the case requires it, to put their slaves in irons and to have them whipped and rode or roped. Now, with Article 38, now you understand where people be sitting around talking about, they're packing 80% of the people in prisons are blacks and Puerto Ricans and everything, and this is racist and stuff. No, it's the Christian Black Codes. and those are tags put on Moors under subjects. They are not pedigree identities. Blacks and Puerto Ricans or Latinos are not pedigree identities or historical pedigrees of peoples. They are tags put upon defeated Moors by the hybrid Europeans, regulated by members of the Circle Church and Chancery, with all jurisdictional powers run from Fleet Street, England, delivered to Washington, D.C., then distributed to the different municipalities and the corporate states or states of jurisdictions, distinguished from state republic jurisdictions, which were overthrown. Thank you very much. They're all run by the Christian Black Codes. That's where you get those abuses from. Article 43. Husbands and wives shall not be seized and sold separately when belonging to the same master, and their children whom under 14 years of age shall not be separated from their parents, and such seizures and sales shall be null and void. The present article shall apply to voluntary sales, and in such cases, sales should take place in violation of the law. The seller shall be deprived of the slave. He was illegally retained, and said slave shall be adjudged to the purchase without any additional. Article 44, slaves 14 years old and from this age up to 60 who are settled on lands and plantations and are at present working on them shall not be liable to seizure for debt, except for what may be due out of the purchase money agreed to be paid for them, unless said grounds or plantations shall be distressed and seized, and judicial sale of a real estate without including the slave of the aforesaid age who are part of said estate shall be deemed null and void.
So, you know what that sounds like? What came to mind when you're reading that? When we're talking about the issue now about the border and unaccompanied minors.
Yes. All of that operation is still the Black Codes. And people keep looking at, well, where's due process? They're not constitutional operators. They're organized criminals. They're not your government. They're Roman curate members. That's a fact. You know, our people, it's hard for our people to accept that among the hybrids operating in North America, that these people are Roman curia members and that they're carrying out the rules of Rome. They're not carrying out justice. They don't love Jesus. They just use him as a front. They don't love Muhammad and they don't love the Prophet. They don't love Allah. They're using them as a front. They use them as a front to get the people's trust. Then you start dealing with them and they screw you every time. And you ain't caught on yet. It's not racism. It's the Christian Black Codes.
For Dr. G, you took the plea. No, I did not take the plea, Sade. I was a city official. And they just dismissed it. I didn't plea anything. You know, with that ticket, Grand Sheik. Someone said I took the plea. I didn't take the plea. I didn't take the plea. I
said, even then it's interesting.
When I showed up, I sat there for 15 minutes. When after they released me on my OR, I came back for court, and I sat there for 15 minutes. They said dismissed. It was dismissed. I never even went in the courtroom, so-called courtroom. I sat out there, but I was a city official. But I didn't plead.
Yeah, of course you're not, because that admits the jurisdiction. Keep that in mind.
Right.
They had no jurisdiction in the first place.
Yeah.
Article 50. Masters, when 25 years old, shall have the power to manumit their slaves. And I suggest that y'all who are listening Look up the word manumit. So when you have these so-called black scholars talking about freed slaves and manumitted, and we was manumitted in 1865 and Juneteenth and all this stuff, that's BS. You've been played and you're being played. Manumission does not mean liberation. You better believe that. Like for real, for real, for real. Masters, when 25 years old, shall have the power to manumit their slaves either by testamentary dispositions or by acts inter vivos. And write that down, inter vivos. That's INTER VIVACE. Pay attention to all of these law terms because they have much to do with the social engineering that's been going on relative to our people. Say it again.
How do you spell it again?
Inter vivos. Yeah. INTER, one word, vivos. VIVACE. And the other word, manumit. 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 None of these words mean what our people have been thinking they mean. So our people think they've been liberated in slavery and 1865. And we was able to get our own peanut butter sandwiches at cents. You stop lying to yourself. BS. All this stuff was institutionalized.
Inter vivos.
Inter vivos.
INTER VIVOS.
Right here is what we're talking about the time that this was written. This is in 1700s.
Okay.
The structure of the spelling may change, but this is the spelling.
Giving between living people.
1700s, this is the spelling.
A legal term referring to a transfer or gift made during one's lifetime.
Yes. So transfer of responsibility, jurisdiction, gift, people, trade. Gotta put it in perspective. Anyway. Pardon me. Yeah, so, and thereas slaves with a view to acquire the necessary means to purchase their freedom may be tempted to commit theft or deeds of plunder, no matter to set free the slaves without the obtaining from the superior council a decree of permission to that effect, which permission shall be granted without cost when the motive for the setting free of said slaves, as specified in the petition of the master, shall appear legitimate to the tribunal. And all future acts for the emancipation of the slaves freed shall not be entitled to their freedom. They shall be taken away by their former masters and confiscated for the benefit of the India Company. So the India Company and the Virginia Company is really what our people have been falsely calling the United States.
And when we were listening to Mel K talking about the Pesos family and all that they own, which is now appears to be multiple corporations, but it's really owned by this one trust with the 12 or 13.
Now, and then you're talking about
bloodline families.
Now keep in mind when you're looking at that, you're looking at the hybrid Europeans that took over Iberia. Iberia is now known as Europe.
Okay.
So now you're talking about Germany, France, etc. And this is again why when they're teaching history, they will teach Europe as only the hybrids. They won't teach Europe as the Picts, the Moors, and the Dubs, which are the true Europeans, which are Africans. That's why they won't say Iberia.
It's funny when you see a lot of so-called Africans in Europe, they act as if they came there instead of the.
it's the disassociation practices that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But again, just like we said before, just like when we were talking, I think the last time we showed some of the coats of arms of Europe, with Joel A. Rogers, one of the world's most awarded scholars.
Mm.
Do you see any pale faces?
No.
Not a one. See, so people keep forgetting in the early 1800s is this is when we lost Europe or Iberia. The same way, like when you see a lot of people talking jurisdictions or like they're talking about the economic trade competition between Russia, the United States, and China now, as an example, in Brazil, or what they call the BRICS nations, competing with the U.S. They keep looking at it from the perspective that they're competing with a country.
Mm.
They're not looking at that they're competing with a corporate entity, operators of Rome, who have been going to and fro the earth, devouring nations, and then pretending to be a nation themselves. So you got to look at that paradox that creates a lot of convoluted thought, doesn't it? But not knowing that is dangerous to people when they come to jurisdiction. This is why people, and again, a lot of questions that will come to pass, or come about to even some of these conversations is if people don't get over that mountain of miscomprehension of understanding that the United States is not a country, never was a country. If they don't wrap their heads around that, they still don't get it. If they don't wrap their heads around that, when the hybrid Europeans keep saying America as if it's a country, that they're being robbed as soon as they make those kind of statements. It's a total misrepresentation. And so a lot of the information is to get us clear. In other words, if you can't comprehend what's broken, you can't fix it. You'll never fix it. This is another reason why projection is practiced by them, by projecting deeds that they do to others on others to distract you from them, and also to claim names and that are not their own, and then put names on the things that are not their own in order to claim things that are not their own and to distort history. So when you hear hybrid Europeans talking about America as a country, you already know that that person is trying to steal the birthright and the estate, or trying to maintain status quo, even if they're making statements that appear to sound restorative of the republic order, if you get the whole point. When you see them talking about America as a country, fraud. If you see them keep continuing calling the United States as if it's a country, fraud. Because what they're really they're just trying to avoid, which you can comprehend politically, of them admitting that North America, Central America, South America is Morocco. That's the country. Morocco is the land. That's the country. Now, the political jurisdiction of trade that took over after breach of treaty is the U.S. corporation, India company, and the Virginia company, pretending to be the country and styled as the United States on corporate papers that's available to anybody that does research. So all they needed was a few generations under the Board of Education to convince these people that the U.S. was a country. And that's the paradigm that we're dealing with today. So when people are trying to fix things, they keep on speaking of the corporation of conquest as the country. At that point in the linguistic structure, they're giving up their birthright. You see, so we have to fix that, don't we?
Yes.
This is why we have to redundantly, and to the point of being boring, redundantly remind people, with the change of knowledge comes a change of your language. And this is, again, when people who claim to be scholars keep calling the U.S. the country, you already know they're either compromised agents and indeed not the scholars that they claim. You want to read some more of these black coats?
Yes.
So I'm going to read 53 and 54. We command all manumitted slaves to show the profoundest respect to their former masters. This is all that honor that you saw people doing to the corporate state and keep trying to be civil rights citizens and all this kind of stuff. 14th Amendment, this is where that's where that mentality comes from. To their widows and their children, and any injury or insult offered by said manumitted slaves to their former masters, their widows or children, shall be punished with more severity than if it had been offered to any other person. Now you see that variable attitude that our people be calling prejudice, double standard. It's not a double standard. The standard between the corporate state or master and the citizens or the slave. So when you're looking at U.S. citizen, you're looking at slave. And we ain't U.S. citizens. We're nationals of the land. Just keep that in mind. And they shall be punished with more severity than if it had been offered to any other person. We, however, declared them exempt from the discharge of any duties or services and from payment of all taxes or fees or anything else in relationship to their person or to their personal or real estate, either during the life or after the death of said slave. Article 54, we grant manumitted slaves the same rights, privileges, and immunities which are enjoyed by free-born persons. It is our pleasure that their merit in having acquired their freedom shall produce in their favor, not only with regards to their persons, but also to their property, the same effects which our other subjects derive from the happy circumstance of their having been born free. In the name of the King, Fazende Bruxelles, Paris, Bienville de la Grâce, March 1724. There you go. So when you study the Christian Black Codes and you study the details, and keep in mind, you just change the word master to municipality, county, state. And you change the slave into citizen, U.S. citizen, 14th Amendment person, Negroes and blacks, etc. And then you claim the masters who have manumitted their estates to the corporate states under manumission or transferred their ownership of slaves to the Congress. You refer to them as ghouls or dragons of the Ku Klux Klan, also known as, quote unquote, white people. There you go. It's not hidden and is known by all scholars. However, truth is not popular because it kind of busts people's bubble. You know, people have their imaginary, oh, I'm a U.S. citizen with a U.S. sandwich passport and stuff. That's your opinion. That's not the reality. So we need to fix that, don't we?
Yes, we do.
And can it be fixed by a being who doesn't know that slavery, as they know it connotatively, was institutionalized, it was not eliminated, and that there are more slaves that are functioning at Midgard than ever in human history, that more people are enslaved today than there ever were in human history, and that all your permits and licenses, etc., are issues of bottomry instruments from the church and the chancery members in service to the popes of Rome, and are actually tithing fees that convert people's rights and liberties into crimes, which is why they traffic people on the street and they stop people and take their vessels. People need to know what's really going on.
Okay, here's Angel says, a salute with all due respect. Is not the Grand Sheik being subjected to the same statutes and codes,
Absolutely.
Codes as the whole of U.S. Aborigines by the foreign de facto corporate body politic?
Absolutely. And I've been fighting for 40 years. Some wins, some losses, but I ain't a punk and I ain't giving up.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Let me see. We go to the section. Someone says to read White's concise, trusty handbook and learn how to live under your own written law of trust. Actually, that's on the flash drive. Yeah, we got it on the drive now. Actually, let me see. What's it? How can we establish? Yakub Bey says, how can we establish a militia in every territory to start? Where did it go? I think he said to enforce. Kind of slipped away that quick.
I can't hear you.
I'm trying to find where he went. Let me see. Oh, how can we establish a militia in every territory to start, I guess, to enforce the treaty and consular jurisdiction?
The interesting thing that I say in response to that today and now is the war, the Inquisition operations that are operative today are more what you may call ethereal or spiritual than they are in that plane of thinking. Not that is not a necessity.
Type stuff.
It is that the energy, the heavenly energy, that may be involved, but that is more minor now. It is more that you armor yourself in the spiritual realm and in the ethereal knowledge right now, because those things will be rendered somewhat obsolete anyway. That is not a pacification answer, that is a factual answer. And it is more like the beast has mastered the area of imposed human suffering. They have mastered that. You will not acquire from the beast a weapon against himself. However, you have a weapon that is far beyond their capacity to beat. That weapon is called truth. Also, you have another weapon that you have not been using that is more powerful than all of them, and that is your intuitive mind that you have been by design encouraged to suppress and have lacked the knowledge of how powerful it actually is. Look in those areas and find your armor. It's my answer.
Oh.
Don't think that you're without weapons that are needed, because that's not the case. However, the battle is on a level that in some ways you might call can't be expressed in words altogether. But you will be aware of them as you start using your intuitive mind. And that is not a placated answer. That's a factual answer.
Just back up about the study drive. So I want people to know we have a lot of information on the study drive. So let me see.
Now, many who know and have long been aware of the suppressed culture and the science and the history of Al-Mrak, the Americas, do and have traditionally taken advantage of and have abused those who do not know the oath-kept secrets of and about the Moabite Moorish history of the Western Hemisphere. And if the people who are currently carrying the labels and brands, Negro, black, colored, Indian, West Indian, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Latin, Latino, etc., ever intend to be liberated or to be free from the alien, Albion abusive rulership in their own lands, they must learn to face truth and whatever and forever shun ignorance. And they must cease to the revered and the highly protected ritual and practice of substituting beliefs for knowledge. and the religiously promised and protected ignorance among the masses has no foundation in divine truth. And the foregoing fact is a matter and a major factor as to why the quote unquote Christian black codes have been entrenched into the social order, operating so smoothly, going unchallenged and undetected. In this last century and a half of the Almoroccan history of 1865 AD, 1993 AD, that's the time of this writing, 1993, as being a raging financial success for the bureaucratic institution of wardship and slavery in the Union of States. And this has occurred with the naivete, blind faith, and misinformed support of wards and slaves who have been deceived, arrogantly and ignorantly giving eager support and assistance to the Union of States and to the state's de facto institutions. And the time has come for all Asiatics of North America, Almoroc, to seek and to secure their sources of knowledge and of education and erudition from a study of self and a link with other civilized nations outside of the colorable Union of States institutions, overseers, and their agents. The negative and vile conditions and experiences forced upon the Moors under the Union of States jurisdictions have proven that the persons and the peoples and the corporate entities of the Union of States and its peoples as being unethical, de facto, highly uncivilized, and the state citizens and representative bodies' politics are thoroughly corrupt and unworthy of governing or having any sovereign power or authority over anything or anyone outside of their own nations of origins and their de facto and projected affairs. Know you the truth, and the truth will set you free. Freedom and liberty is everybody's job. That I close my statements on the Christian black codes.
Let's see. Are there any more questions or comments? There's a Tariq says, are you familiar with the sister out of Georgia, Chief Johnny's dealing with the land patents? I guess
land patents were created.
Are you familiar with this? They're asking.
I've heard, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But land patents were created actually with the U.S. corporations, with them stealing our land. The land patents are, by technicality and reality, not for the Aboriginal people. We have Aboriginal title that supersede any land patents or anything else that they've created for the transfer of our estates. However, I do comprehend many people have been using all kinds of methods, and I don't reject them or try to make a reclaim of our lost estate. However, keep in mind that the jurisdiction of the United States Corporation does not supersede your Aboriginal claim of title.
This must be someone new to the channel. Amon Ra Dimud. Is this no? I don't know whether they said mean no as well as should be knowledge only for Muslim. I see a lot of Islams. So what they're saying.
Well, of course.
No,
but
it's obviously somebody that doesn't know that Islam means I self-law and master.
This is universal.
And they must be new to the I'm saying
these principles are universal for humanity. However, much of this information is targeted directly to the ancient Canaanite descendants and Moabite descendants at North America, because this is the landmark or the land area or the jurisdictional geographical territory from which the codes for the papacy of Rome is perpetrated upon the rest of the world through the U.S. Corporation, India Company, Virginia Company armies that belong to the popes of Rome. To that degree, it is focused on the Moors of North America. However, the principles are for the whole world.
My assumption is this is someone who doesn't know about their Moorish nationality and birthright.
Well, they got to know a little bit of the history.
Right.
And this is again why, we'll go over some, just like, for instance, the black codes, right? If somebody's looking at black codes and they're looking at municipal codes, rules, regulations, zoning, policing policies, and then they read the black codes, they can see it. The linguistics is 1700s, if you get the point. However, it's very clear. So a lot of times people think the things that are happening today have what you call contemporary origin in the nature of someone having an attitude, when actually these people belong to secret societies, and they're actually going, this is one of their manuals of operation. So when the chessboard, you don't come to a chess game with playing checkers, because you lose. But if you have a cognizance of what is being used against you, you have a knowledge of how to counter them.
Please let them know what Islam stands for when you're seeing it in the chat.
I, self-law, and master.
That's what
It's
Islam
another degree.
stands for.
It's not just a creed from the concept that most people have. And you'll learn that in time coming on the official House of Reawakening Minds. So we're clearing up a lot of concepts. And I comprehend how people can be bent by that, because we keep in mind the training for most of our people is into what they call creed belief systems or social solace systems. So as soon as they hear shalom, assalamu alaikum, they're assuming that people are in what you would call ritual, structured, fenced in belief systems, and know this for sure. That's not for all of us.
In issue 69, Fatah asks, what is a treasury bond?
A treasury bond were created in mostly at North America, 1861, late 1861, 1862, on the backs of Aboriginal people, i.e. Moors, by the hybrid Germanic tribes, Europeans, to fund their India and Virginia company, which they converted into the corporate entity that you know as the United States, to fund their operations. Those were treasury bonds created on our backs about 150 years or more ago, that the Pope mentioned when he made that letter to Obama. That's what those bonds are. That's the bondage, not a chain. And then, of course, all the marriage certificates and birth certificates following, and all the driver's license and the CDLs and all of those instrumentalities, business licenses, property taxes, all of these frauds were created, and all of those are bonded into treasuries, and they're put on the stock market. So the fraud of the stock market and the treasury bonds look around 1861. 1861, 1862, to fund the United States corporation, human trafficking operations, and the pretext of that private corporation, foreign entity, fakedly being a country, which it was not and is not. And of course, the results and the injury caused upon the human family, and particularly the people of North America, Central America, and South America, needs to be comprehended and understood. The Christian Black Codes is one of the doorways to let you comprehend their thinking and the motivation of their legislation, although their legislation altogether is and are and were de facto.
Here's a couple of more questions. Let me go a bit. From Jabal El Tariq, does someone have to belong to a lodge to wear a fez and tassel? Does a fez make someone a Moor?
The fez is the national headdress of Asiatic Africans, Moabites, and Canaanites from time long time immemorial, from times that we can't remember. It is actually
You see it
a
on the
geometric-
walls, on the carpet.
geometric symbolization of the cosmos or the universe. That cosmos or universe is also symbolized by the crescent moon and the star of Venus. So when you see the cosmos symbol of the crescent and the star, people often, based on how they've been taught or mistaught, think it just means Islam. No, it means the cosmo culture of the ancient Canaanite Moabites. It is the culture of the world.
So do they have to belong to a lodge? Is what they're asking?
No, lodge is a contemporary construct of mostly hybrid Europeans coming into the knowledge of ancient Hikkupta and imitating us, and it's called Freemasonry.
And does
The headdress is the national headdress of Moors, superseding any lodge.
does the Feds make one or more? He's asking.
Moor is your bloodline. How's the Feds going to? How's your clothes? How's your sneakers? How's your Nikes going to make you a Moor? Anything else? This is back to even like you notice that, Dr. Iowa, that even in the late years, very often as I travel, I don't even wear my Fez so that people don't get distracted. I'm very down to earth, if you get the point, because people keep looking at it from a perspective and not paying attention to what you're telling them. That's the Fez is the national headdress of the Moors, universally, and Moors tribes, i.e. Africans.
Here's another question. Let me go back here. Let me make sure I got that. Have you heard, Still I Rise, have you heard about banks rejecting qualified signature by customers signing all rights reserved UCC 13008? I was refused service and told that if I wanted my check cashed, comma, I don't know what, Chase Bank. Well, I guess they're.
Oh, of course. Now, if you comprehend what you're dealing with and who you're dealing with, you would. We're not defending what they're doing, but you already comprehend the answer as to why, because everything they're doing is fraud. And if they accept that instrument like that, which they could do, and some do, that you automatically have a future suit, because you already know that the check is a fraud. So is the fiat.
Now, someone told me that they signed theirs in a way that said they signed their signature cards. They went back to the bank, re-signed their signature cards, and added for credit only, I think, or something like that whatever they with the signature they had to put for credit only. Does that make what
what they're doing? They're limiting the jurisdictional use of the signature, because whenever you do business with them, they also lift your signatures and put it on instruments that you had nothing to do with. Because remember, the platform is a fraud, and when you participate with them, they're saying that you're sanctioning the fraud. Therefore, you can't argue rights because it's a fraud. It's sort of like. When people learn that the birth certificate and the marriage certificate are bank bonds, and then they talk about authenticating or securing them or becoming holder in due course of these instrumentalities and seeking a benefit. Because remember, they're fraudulent instruments that were created under fraud. They maintain fraud. So if you're trying to take a fraudulent instrument and bring it into a de jure venue, that creates a liability for them. Do you really expect their cooperation?
No, of course not.
Now, when they know it's a fraud, and now that you're signing like this, they know that you know it's a fraud,
right.
And they know if they accept it, you just set them up for a future suit.
Okay.
And you have a right to that. However, some of them don't argue it because they know things are falling apart. But some who do argue it, you already know the answer as to why they don't. It's like coming to Happy Clowns and saying, Happy the Clown. Now I'm going to do business with you, Happy Clown, but I know you're not the president. What do you mean I'm not the president? Happy the Clown, you're really not the president. Don't tell nobody. I mean, that's basically what you're dealing with. You know he's Happy the Clown. He knows you know that he's having the clown. Now he's going to cooperate with you to say, well, which side of the neck should I put the noose? Does it look good over here or does it look good over there? They're looking at future liabilities. Keep in mind that treason, the wages of sin is death. The wages of treason is death. Almost all of these persons and people who have been operating on all levels of government at North America have committed treason. You think they're going to have documentation that backs that up? Accepting it from you? I'm just something to look at. Not condemning, not defending, just giving you something to look at. Right.
Last question is the person I think they're saying they answered it 5 times. Y'all got to realize these questions scroll fast, and then I can't get back up to them. So if you're putting things in multiple times and I'm not answering it or asking it, they don't see it, but I do see this.
Because it's scrolling as fast as we can move. Remember, you all, for the time that we're talking, we may have hundreds of people that are logged in and are forwarding questions. And you'll see I don't see them, but Dr. Naila does because she's producing the show.
And I can't see them.
They're scrolling down as fast as you can. You can't even read them because they're scrolling down so fast and they're coming on so fast. We appreciate your participation, but comprehend. I think
the question had something to do with real estate. What's real in us? And I was trying to find this question, but the one part of the question was what is eminent domain? And she said the question is for you, although I do know eminent domain, having been the housing director.
It implies the sovereign is claiming for the estate the sovereign power of the legitimate state to reclaim an estate or lands, etc., for the purposes of the good of the nation. That is called eminent domain.
When I was a housing director, one of the things that the city had eminent domain over certain land. So you may there may be a tract of land there was where people lived when they were, for instance, when I-95 came through, they took eminent domain over all of those houses that were in the pathway,
whether they were paid or not,
and they offered you whatever price that they felt was fair, and you had to move.
And if you didn't take it, they took it anyway. Now that's called sovereign power, sovereign authority. However, all operations as such under the India and Virginia Company, disguised as the United States, are frauds, treason, and in fact, criminal acts and violations and crimes against humanity. Keep that in mind.
Here's the question. The real estates, are reeling our estates. How do we crush this? And what is eminent domain? So
and this is back to, and all of that's what? Christian black codes. So what's really clear when we're looking at these dynamics and these social things is see so much work that needs to be done on the part of all Aboriginal people. One of the first things to do is for them to claim the truth of their pedigree and their right of estate, etc., and reversion of the state. And I want to thank you all for sharing this evening with us here at the House of Reawakening Minds, and trust that we've done some good and that we've inspired some of you to study harder and to be more encouraged to love one another, to be more forgiving, and understand the hells that we have caught and the miseries that we have suffered. Everybody on the planet has pretty much suffered it. So we're not unique. And we're not special. However, it's in our interest to love one another and to try to help others and to want for others what you want for yourselves. And take responsibility for the great things that our forefathers have done, and take responsibility for the not so great things that our forefathers have done. Learn to forgive, learn to analyze on facts and truth, learn to not ever displace knowledge with beliefs. They do not belong on the same table. With that, I present to you, I thank all of you who have been supporting the House of Reawakening Minds, etc., over the years. And I would like to, in the future, at least give the appellations of some of the people to acknowledge you.
Especially
We thank you. We know that there's heavy opposition against truth. No matter who it comes from, it's heavy opposition, because the dark priesthood is being dismantled on multiple levels, on all points of law, on the land, in the air, and under the water. That includes them damn tunnels. So please support the House of Reawakening Minds, and you can support via PayPal, via Cash App, or checks and money orders, and payable to House of Reawakening Minds, and sent to 602 Vanderbilt Avenue, Wilmington, Delaware Republic, zip exempt 19801. Thank you so much.
802.
And
it's 2.
02?
Yes.
Oh.
We're sorry.
Yeah, 09802.
19802. Someone asked what the flash drive is about for you guys.
The flash drives are accumulation of a lot of information and knowledge.
Down in the drawer.
Here.
Well, no, in the drawer. Bottom. Pull out one of those little.
These are the flash drives. It will come. The flash drive will come in this little beautiful pack, and it has over 700 points of documentation, information, and knowledge that will help people who don't have the option of years of studies of many other scholars, with information that you'll never get in any college, you'll never get in any university, you'll never get in most any of your so-called organized civic groups, you'll not get in any of your organized so-called religious groups, but it serves the purpose of helping people who are sincerely interested in and concerned into helping to uplift fallen humanity, to help expose frauds that have been put upon humanity, to help expose information that has been suppressed or hidden from humanity, and helps those who have not had the option of scholarship to become scholars overnight in kind of a sense, and to aid people in starting to take responsibility for their own lives, and also to discourage the corrupt practice of substituting beliefs in place of knowledge, so that we can start getting things done to actually help humanity evolve and help humanity come out of the doldrums and the din of forced servitude and subjugation, etc. So the flash drive will keep anyone busy over 15 years. And most of it, when you all get it, you'll start doing some research. It'll give you some cross references, and it'll keep you busy. But I guarantee you, you'll be studying for years and years on end. And it'll change your concepts extremely quickly.
And it's running across the bottom of the screen right now. You see, to obtain the link to purchase the flash drive, you just need to text the word USB or flash drive. Just USB is fine to 302-345-0500, and you'll get a link, and we will get it out to you. It's a 16 gigabyte drive. It's probably almost full now.
Yeah, this is my update, right?
Oh,
this is the updated one?
That's the updated one. Okay. Yeah. So, we thank you so much. As you can see, how to purchase. We will send you a link. Just text USB. You don't have to text a letter. You don't have to say anything, but USB. And the drive will come to you. I think that's it, Gracie.
Anyway, thank you all for supporting House of Reawakening Minds. Have a grand evening.
Oh, I do want to say that we do have we do have our new advertiser, and we are going to do a contest. We just don't know how we're going to do it, but they're going to be able to get their own. The winner is going to be able to get in their own size, that sterling silver. Oops, side. Let me see see the side. Let them see the side of it too. How the width of it. It's a sterling silver, beautiful sterling silver circle 7 ring. But we have to figure out exactly how we're going to do it, and then you will get one made in your the winner will in their size from Naboo. Malik Leon. It's Naboo Jewelry. So I've been running the ad, but that's coming up. Probably we're gonna do this on the 3rd Friday when you come back. How about that? We'll figure out how the contest is going to run. Thank you so very much for tuning in to House of Reawakening Minds, the official House of Reawakening Minds. Thank you so much for your support on Tuesday nights for Office Hours with Dr. G. And thank you so much for those of you who have, without any content being there, gone over to Dr. G is official and have subscribed to my channel. As soon as I get that 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to start going live over there with my metaphysical type and other stuff. We're not taking this channel down. We're just having an additional channel where we're going to put more of our more
as they all know, it's kind of necessary because as the world is awakening and reawakening, we're being attacked from the dark priesthood and their agents from all angles, from both sides and all sides. And therefore, there's another reason why she's setting up another channel, so that as the dark priesthood try to block information,
we have options.
That we will have options. So we don't have to tell you that because you know that it's open now, meaning that the dark priests are more open now. They're not even trying to program. They're not even wasting their time programming. They're just kicking the people's butts left and right. You know, they're not even, how do you say, giving you, how do you say, no Novocaine. They're just showing who they really are.
Someone also asked, can they just buy the ring? Of course you can buy the ring. You can buy a ring. As a matter of fact, as we're getting ready to go up, I'm going to let that run right there. You can go to www.naboojewelry.com and you can order your own Circle 7 ring because only one person is going to own win the ring that we actually are offering. But, you know, he has beautiful jewelry. He made me a necklace.
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful.
I gotta find my Dr. G necklace. Anyway, but he can make, you know, anything. So please do check out naboojewelry.com, and his number is there also. But somebody's going to win one. So we appreciate you.
Oh, yeah, it's a beautiful ring.
It is. But that was
very high quality, high detail.
It is. So, anywho, thank you so much, as usual, for tuning in. My advice to you is to love yourself and love each other. And that's the only way that we're really going to make it.
Yeah, and forgive.
Forgive. I have to keep putting in there, respect the chat, respect each other, because sometimes it gets a little heated in the chat room.
Yeah,
that's comprehensible. But we're talking about, you know, overcoming what they're doing, and we can't even overcome ourselves. So we got to work on that.
Yeah. I say, know your higher self and your lower self.
Yeah.
And part of the exercise,
that inner healer, as I talked about in my poem, that is what people need to get to. So thank you so much. Until next time, we are tuning out. All right. Thanks, Gracie, for a phenomenal class as usual. Appreciate you.
Peace, Serena.
Deeper and deeper I go. I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you.